Week one's in the books of the 2024 NFL season. That was a lot for me. That was exciting, though. A lot of sloppy play around the league, but I'm happy with how it ended. How are you feeling after that?
Well, I'm happy my team won. You're happy your team won.
Yeah.
You're probably more happy than I am how your picks went for the week. But overall, it was an exciting week. Lots to talk about. So let's get into it.
Yeah. I will say I was 14-2 with my picks this week.
I was 9-7.
Yeah. So
got some catching up to do.
Yeah. We'll see where we stand after the last week. All right. The first game of week one was the Chiefs and the Ravens. Chiefs won 27-20 as I predicted. All around, you could tell this was a game full of players that didn't play much in the preseason. It was pretty sloppy. A lot of penalties, especially early on, which was really frustrating to watch. We'll get into more of that later. But the Ravens came close in this one. We all know it was about a toe away from winning. Isaiah Likely had the big day at tight end, which was kind of a surprise. Mm-hmm. As for the rest of the Ravens offense, I mean, it was Derrick Henry's first game there. We expected big things from him. He did score the first touchdown of the season, but he struggled to get going, only 3.5 yards a carry. Henry really is one of those running backs where he wears the defense down, and the Ravens don't seem like a team where they're going to give him 20, 25 carries a game. So I'm not sure how that's going to look over the course of the season, if we can reasonably expect that to get better, that situation. But all in all, I was disappointed with the Ravens offense. Lamar was constantly throwing floaters into the flats. He was under pressure. You got to give the Chiefs defense credit. I mean, Chris Jones could have had 6 sacks if he was playing anybody other than Lamar Jackson. So bless Lamar and his legs. He did account for almost 400 yards. But again, they only got 20 points out of it. So I give the Chiefs defense some credit there. Now, you have other guys on the Ravens. Zay Flowers, heavily targeted, didn't find success. Mark Andrews didn't really find success. Mm-hmm. It was a tough day. The Chiefs offense had a lot of bright spots. Kelsey was quiet, but he did have a couple of vintage Kelsey moments. That 3rd and 12 where he had that conversion when Mahomes was scrambling was exciting. The receivers, though, in Kansas City, they've turned that situation around, right?
Absolutely.
Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy. Mm-hmm. Xavier Worthy had a huge day for a guy in his first game. I mean, 2 touchdowns on 3 touches was pretty insane. This is a game where I think both teams are going to be great. They're going to be there at the end of the year. We both picked the Ravens to be in the Super Bowl. But it was a sloppy game from what I saw. What'd you think?
Yeah, well, for me, there's 2 key takeaways from this game. Number one is that Mahomes hasn't lost his dark magic through the offseason. He's still got it. Mm-hmm. And Lamar Jackson is probably the most talented quarterback that's never going to win a Super Bowl, even though I have him picked to win it this year. Just because he has to go to the Chiefs.
Well, hang on, you have him losing the Super Bowl.
I have him losing the Super Bowl.
Right,
Fair
right,
enough.
yeah.
Okay, so I guess
to the Lions
still holds. To the Lions. Yes.
So do I. Yeah.
But when I look back on that game, everything about it, even after watching it, tells me that Baltimore should have won. Mm-hmm. All right, the Chiefs came out hot early. All right, they put holes through that Baltimore defense. The Ravens scored a touchdown early on, but they did struggle through the bulk of the game. However, the Ravens did have the most yards per drive for any team this season, any team this week. Mm-hmm. So that's something to consider. They only had 20 points, but they had over 45 yards per drive on average, which is something quite unusual. So they were able to move the ball well. I mean, like you said, most of that was on Lamar's legs, but they just couldn't end up capitalizing on those yards. But Lamar Jackson, I mean, I really wanted him to win that game. I really wanted him to get the ball into the end zone, on those last 3 throws, and, a toe away. He just couldn't do it. But
he had some big misses even before that.
Well, that first throw to Likely, I'm not too upset about that. He put it in a spot where only his guy could catch it, after the big play to Bateman down the sideline to put him in that position. But the next 2 throws, I mean, Flowers wide open in the back of the end zone. Now, I have rewatched that play a couple of times, and I'm starting to think that maybe Flowers should have approached it in more of a soft drop type situation where he slowed down to show Jackson that he had the entire space to throw the ball rather than sprinting through and risk the behind the back throw, which ended up happening. And then of course the last throw, which was a good throw but a better throw, would have resulted in a touchdown and a potential 2-point conversion. So I think Lamar's going to have a big year. I mean, he looks crazy the way he, put his head and shoulder down to try to run into those Chiefs defenders. I mean, I think he's, set out for blood this year, and it's going to be fun watching him.
Yeah, and he appears to have, shed some weight this year. He looks a little lighter on his feet than he did last year, and I think he's credited that with his ability to run. I believe he said that if he was in this kind of shape last year, they would have won that playoff game. I don't know, Lamar, if that's the case, maybe you should have lost the weight last year. I don't know what to tell you. But this was a game also where the Ravens, to me, I know they had yards on offense, but to me it didn't look like it was being done in a way that was sustainable. There were a lot of broken plays where they were gaining yards. I mean, the Isaiah Likely long touchdown, I mean, they desperately needed that to happen, and you can give credit to Likely, and you should, but there was also just poor tackling by the Chiefs, I thought.
That was a low probability score.
Very low probability score, yeah. And so between that and Lamar gaining all these yards on what were basically broken plays when he should have been, dead in the backfield, I understand it's Lamar, it's the Ravens. They're going to do that often. It's not a one-time thing. But I am concerned about their ability to consistently move the ball downfield. I don't know. Harbaugh's got to figure something out because you have Derrick Henry. You got Lamar. Like, run the ball, yes, but we want to see you wear down the defense over the course of the game and actually gain yards on plays where you're trying to gain yards in that way, not just gaining yards on busted plays, because that's not sustainable.
Yeah, I think Henry gets about 25 to 27 carries week 2. I can't see him getting any less after that.
Yeah, and we have to mention, again, the penalties in this game were terrible. Ronnie Staley was called for 4 illegal formations in the first half. Jawan Taylor was lined up in the backfield and constantly false starting. I know people keep saying, well, you're allowed that little move, that little kick before the snap. Look, this dude's been doing this for years, since he was on the Jags. I mean, we all know, like last year, the opening game against the Lions, how infuriating it was to watch. It just doesn't seem fair, and I know the Ravens players had called that out a couple times as well. But yeah, I don't know. That was our first big game of the week, and it was exciting for football to be back, but I just couldn't help but think, man, these guys are rusty.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, leading into the second game, if you want to talk about rust, I mean, my God, it's a miracle that the Eagles came out of that one with a victory the way that Jalen Hurts was playing, right?
Yeah. I mean, they did end up playing in Brazil, we should say. The wildfires didn't prevent the game from happening.
Neither did the gangs.
No, so the Eagles win 34-29. We both picked the Eagles, I believe. One of the big stories from this game, though, is Jordan Love at the end of the game. We'll just fast forward to that. In an attempt to win, going for the Hail Mary on the third to last play, about 6 seconds left, he suffers a knee injury. And the worst fear, of course, was that it was an ACL tear done for the year. It seems at this point, though, that he's going to miss a few weeks, and then we're going to see. But that's scary. And of course, I picked the Packers to win the division. I think at this point, that's going to be hard to recover from if they don't have their quarterback for, even if it's just 4 games. So I'm more confident now than ever that the Lions are going to run away with it. But that's an unfortunate one. And especially at the very end of the game like that in week 1, that's awful. Now, I'm glad the Eagles won, right? I'm very happy about that. Like you said, Hurts didn't play a perfect game. We'll put it that way. I will say he made some beautiful throws.
He did.
He had a couple touchdowns, one to Brown, one to Saquon, who we're going to talk about in a second. But those balls looked on point to me.
Yeah.
So I think he's going to have a good year. I said in my predictions for this year that, I hope he develops, and he's already a great passer, but I hope he really has an emphasis on that point of his game. I really want to see him ball out through the air, and those throws were beautiful. That's exactly what I wanted to see from him. And of course, on the ground, he's still a threat. Now, Bijan Robinson, what a move that was.
Bijan Robinson? You
mean Saquon Barkley.
Yeah, Saquon Barkley.
I always get their names mixed up. I don't know why. Saquon Barkley's unbelievable.
He is.
Yeah. Really 3 touchdowns on the day. If he stays healthy this year, I mean, what the hell are the Giants doing? Yeah. What did you think of this one?
Well, just to touch on Jordan Love's situation, it's unfortunate that it happened. I wish him a healthy and speedy recovery. But you're right. The Packers season is now looking far more grim than it was just 1 week ago because he's not playing for them. He had a good game. He can really throw the ball. He can really throw the ball. I was very impressed with how he played. There were still some questions about that Eagles secondary. I think they're much better than they were last year, especially towards the end of the year. Mm-hmm. But Jordan Love didn't really have much trouble picking them apart when he had to. So hard for Packers fans, but I'm sure he'll come back in about 4 or 5 weeks, and he'll put on a show when he gets back. Now to Philly, excuse me. Yes, Saquon Barkley is great. Yes.
So is Bijan.
Yes, so is Bijan, yeah. Yes, A.J. Brown is great. Devontae Smith, he really won the game for them at the end there with some of those big catches. But the Eagles will only go as far as Jalen Hurts lets them go. And we saw that last year with that collapse, although that was more of a team collapse. But everybody seemed to rely on Jalen to try to pull them through. Mm-hmm. Good news is I think that they're out of whatever funk they were in at the end of last year. The team seemed to battle when they were down, which did not happen at all the last 6 weeks of the year last year, including the playoff game. When they facing any adversity at all, they basically just collapsed and, on to next week. But they fought this week, which was good. A.J. Brown had his first 100-yard game since San Francisco last week, which was a big deal because in order for Philly to be a good team, they have to get him going. But Jalen Hurts, Week 1 in Brazil, I'll give it to him. However, he does not look like the same Jalen Hurts from 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. Going back, to last year, I'd say after the Buffalo game, he still didn't impress me with the way he played today. You mentioned his ability to make throws. He's always been able to make throws, but it's the consistency at which he makes the throws and also his decision making. Mm-hmm. It was so frustrating to watch anytime a play broke down and he would either try to take off and then slide for a gain of nothing or throw the ball into a heavily, covered situation and risk being picked off. He threw 2 picks. He probably should have thrown about 4 or 5 that game. So I think he needs to develop in the sense where once a play breaks down, he needs to look for an open man rather than look to take off right away. And then when that's not there, look for the open guy. But positive that they got the win. Positive that the defense seemed to play good enough, to hold Love to not a complete blowout, which I was afraid of. Positive that all of the weapons on offense, including the offensive line, minus a couple of issues with the snaps early on, were able to play well. But Hurts has got to be better if they want to make a run in the playoffs this year. Yeah,
we talked about whether or not they were going to finally overcome the loss of their coordinators. And for me, they look better. I think what you're saying is true that last year they kind of fold in the face of any adversity. And now week 1, a fresh start does kind of help you out in that regard. Mm-hmm. But I'm not sold yet as to whether they've actually recovered from losing those guys. We're going to have to see what they look like in week 8, week 10, deep into the season. Mm-hmm. Right now I'm not sold, but they got to be feeling good. Coming back home to the States with a win. Could have ended a lot worse. They could have been the Packers. Yeah. And speaking of them, the Packers, shout out to Jaden Reed and another guy that joined the team, Josh Jacobs. I think Jacobs is going to be good this year. He got off to a slow start, but I was impressed with some of the runs he had. Mm-hmm. So moving on, we got our first 1 o'clock game. This was the Falcons and the Steelers. This is a game I took the Falcons to win, and I expected big things of the Falcons this year, and they still might achieve it, but the Steelers won 18-10, 18 as in 6 field goals. Yes. All from kicker Chris Boswell, 3 of which were from over 50. So this game absolutely flew in the face of my prediction, but as I watched it, I wasn't that surprised by what I was seeing. The Steelers' defense was amazing, and as I watched, I remembered that. Right? They have great linebackers. They got a great team. Kirk was looking kind of lost. He looks old, Kirk, and part of that has to be the Achilles. Yeah. You're slower after that. He's also 36 years old, I believe. I don't know. I expected more, but it's the first game for Kirk in that offense. It's the first game for their OC. It's the first game for their head coach, all working together. So that might change, and they just went up against probably the best defense they're going to play this year, potentially. We'll see how it goes. But the Steelers, man, we were talking about their offense last week. We were too busy worrying about who was going to play quarterback, how are they going to matriculate down the field. Doesn't matter. Russell Wilson didn't even play. Had an injury. They said, let's throw Fields in there. didn't have to score any points. They have a kicker. They have a hell of a kicker, and they have a hell of a defense. I predicted this team to get 7 wins. I think you predicted them to have be sub 500 as well. I don't know. I think we were wrong. I know it's one game, only one game in the books, but this is a team that very well could go 9-8.
Yeah, I mean, for my notes here, right besides Steelers defense, all it says is wow.
Yeah.
I mean, barring 2 called back fumble recoveries, this would have even been, worse than it was for Atlanta.
Yeah.
That Steelers defense looked, unpenetrable. That was something else to watch, especially considering that everybody was so big on Atlanta's offense this year with the weapons they had and Kirk coming over. But I wouldn't be too worried about it. Week 1, they have the weapons. They still have some things they got to work out. They're going up against a much weaker Philly defense, especially the secondary next week. So I think that Kirk is going to be able to put up some big-time numbers, and we're going to see way more production out of everybody. Now, something that kind of goes under the radar with this game here is the Falcons' defense. I mean, they didn't allow a touchdown.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They didn't allow a touchdown. They played well.
Yeah.
I mean, that pickup of the safety acquisition along with Jesse Bates, I mean, Falcons defense looks good. And I think that defense is going to actually, help them enough this year, where their offense might struggle at times. Just unfortunate they ran into the steel curtain week 1, right?
The only reason I would pump the brakes on that is because the Falcons defense played against the Steelers offense, right? On top of that, I did notice Jesse Bates had a couple plays and he's a player I'm, enamored with. I talk about him all the time, but he had a couple plays that were head scratchers to me where, he should have been closing in on a guy much sooner than he did. He gave up some throws. Again, I understand they played a good game. They didn't allow any touchdowns, but I think that might have more to do with the Steelers offense. Again, like you said, it's week 1. It could be that they played really well. It could be that the Steelers offense played really poorly. So I would hesitate to give them too many props just yet.
Yeah, but I do like Justin Fields over Russell Wilson as the starting quarterback.
I think so.
Yeah, he looked like that's what Arthur Smith wants out of a quarterback, even though they weren't able to get any touchdowns. They were able to drive the ball. He did get him into position 6 times to score. I think they just have to clean it up a little bit, and I think that this offense might surprise some people, going into the season. So, yeah.
If the Steelers win 10 games, I'm not going to even be surprised at this point.
That defense, it's like the Browns last year or the Jets last year even. Like the defense just carried them through the entire season. So,
Yeah. Well, moving on to another game, Bills and Cardinals. Bills won 34-28. I think we were both pretty spot on with this prediction. We both thought the Bills would win, but we thought the Cardinals were going to give them hell, and they absolutely did. The Cards got off to a really good start, actually. They were up 17-3 in the first half before the Bills cut it down by 7, and then they just kind of took off with it from there. Josh Allen, despite an early fumble, ended up having 2 touchdowns in the air and 2 touchdowns on the ground. He's a guy that, the whole team runs through Josh Allen. The whole offense does. But it's week 1 and he's already putting his body on the line. He already injured his non-throwing hand. But how sustainable is this? Can he do this for a full season? I mean, he's throwing touchdowns, but I don't know who these guys are that he's throwing touchdowns to. So I don't know how long they're going to keep this up. But the Bills are a team I just continue to have faith in because it's Josh Allen and because it's the Bills. Now, as for the Cardinals, yeah, they showed you some promise. They did have a special teams touchdown thrown in there. Kyler Murray, he made some magic with his legs at moments. Marvin Harrison Jr. was a guy that we talked about a lot going into this game, expecting big things from, which now kind of seems silly considering it would be the first game of his career. Yet the hype was really high, and I think the hype of a lot of rookies this year, especially the quarterbacks, was really high coming into the league, and I think that's just the bias we have because of recent years. CJ Strouds, Jamar Chase, all those types of guys. So, yeah, he had 1 catch, and in hindsight, that was probably a reasonable prediction that we could have made, but we didn't. What did you think about this one?
Well, here I'd like to point out that we have the first dynamic kick return in NFL history with the Cardinals returning the touchdown. So, a landmark game, if you want to put it that way. But, yeah, I mean, is Josh Allen's play sustainable? I think it is. I think he's probably been playing banged up for his entire career just based on, the optics of how he goes out there and puts his body on the line seemingly every other play with something either spectacular or horrifying if you're a Bills fan. But what I liked about this game from Buffalo is the comeback, right?
Yeah.
They had a huge touchdown at the end of the first half to swing momentum back in their favor. And then in the second half, they unleashed Josh Allen MVP mode, right? Like, props to the Cardinals defense for doing what they did to stop him in the first half. But once they came out and made whatever adjustments that they made, it looked like they weren't able to stop him. The Bills receivers, I thought they got a lot of separation. Like, I know that they're not maybe the most coveted in the league in terms of big names, but it looked like they got open a ton. And that led to Josh Allen being one of the big-time throwers this week in terms of net air yards per pass attempt and air yards per pass attempt. So what seemed to happen to me is that they committed to the run early, and that allowed for separation later in the game, and Josh Allen, with his scrambling ability, capitalized on that and just tore that defense apart. So I like the Bills. I got Josh Allen on my fantasy team. I got him as my MVP pick, so I think that Bills are going to be just fine this year. On the Cardinals side of the ball, I mean, Murray did what Murray does with his scrambling ability, just breaking free and getting those first downs so many times. It's just so hard to keep him contained. But the Bills defense did adjust in the second half, and they do need to get their first round wide receiver pick more involved in the offense, which they will next week. I'm not too worried about it. They scored 29 points in a windy Buffalo game, so I think they're going to be okay going forward.
All right, moving on. This was a game we were excited for different reasons. Titans-Bears.
Oh, my God.
Just as I predicted, the Bears won 24-17. However, I can't say like I deserve any credit for this prediction because the manner in which they won was not even close to what I expected because it was probably, I would say, unpredictable. The offense did about as little as they could to contribute.
Goodness.
It turns out Caleb Williams is, in fact, a rookie quarterback. He had under 100 yards on the day. The wide receivers were banged up. The run game was struggling, wasn't quite there. However, I did say the Bears' defense would shock some people.
Yeah.
And it was, in fact, their defense and their special teams that contributed 2 touchdowns on the day, allowing them to win. I was impressed with both of their corners, really. I mean, Jalen Johnson had a great day, had a pick. Tyreek Stevenson with the pick 6. This was a real team effort. Well, I guess you can't say that if the offense didn't really help out. The Titans, though, there's a lot of questions there. Now, I know you predicted big things for the Titans this year, and their offense in particular. I would love to hear what the hell happened.
Well, first, I don't think that either team should be credited with the win here, just based on the performance overall.
They should both have an L. Okay.
Yeah, but a few things I want to touch on here. Last year, which is part of the reason why I was big on Will Levis coming into this year, is because of how much he likes airing it out, right? He had the highest air yards per pass attempt last year, which typically correlates well with, big-time throwers looking back at history, but in this game, I have him down as one of my small-time throwers. He just didn't get the ball downfield or attempt to get the ball downfield. It looked like he was trying to be more of a game manager than what he is, which is more of a, run-and-gun type quarterback. So, I don't think he's going to be able to succeed if he tries to keep up this style of play. He's got to go back to being the risk taker that he is. And of course, that's going to come with some big time mistakes, but it's also going to come with some big time moments. So,
well, here's the thing: if he's trying to play game manager, he's already throwing pick 6s and interceptions all over the field. Yeah, that's him as a game man. You might as well just start slinging it.
Yeah, it's just not working, right? So the Titans are going to have to, change it up, quick in order to fix that offense. Now, granted, they did go against that Bears defense, which did look spectacular. But, I mean, Caleb Williams, sure, he first game, but what a terrible game. His longest pass of the game was 13 yards, right? For a number 1 overall pick with the hype that he has, the big-time arm behind him, I mean, that's just unacceptable, right?
Maybe 15 years ago. Yeah, that would be normal.
Yeah, maybe. But come on. I mean, Bears, one of the worst third down teams, 3 of 15 for third down conversions. They also had less than 20 yards per drive. Against the Titans defense, I think I may have mentioned in one of the previous shows that the Titans defense might surprise some people this year.
I don't think you said that.
But I don't think that this is what I meant by that, if I did say it, because there's no excuse,
No.
for those missed throws and just lack of offensive coordination. He has to be better, and it's concerning because he's not going to face an easier defense for the next couple of weeks. So
Right.
he better find a way to pick it up quick.
And part of it is also, I think he had this athleticism when he was in college, and now he gets to the pros and everyone's a lot faster. It's not like Jaden Daniels where he's just that athletic. Caleb's athletic, but he's not that fast. He's not Lamar. He's not even Jaden Daniels.
He's more of a Baker.
Yeah, so you can't rely on your athleticism that much. You can't keep rolling out and trying to spin, and then you're tackled by the next guy.
Not going to work.
No, not going to work. I will say Tony Pollard was a guy for the Titans that impressed me on offense that I wasn't really expecting. He had a good day. And shout out to Simone Biles' husband for scoring that scoop and score on the block punt.
Owens. Yeah.
Well, if you want to say his name, sure.
Yeah.
But Simone Biles' husband. Well, needless to say, I'm not as sold on the Bears, getting to double-digit wins this year.
Well, I think if they establish the run early and commit to the running game rather than having Caleb do what he wants to do, that probably looks better for them, as a future outcome.
Moving on, we got the Bengals and the Patriots. This was a game I got wrong as the Patriots won 16-10. However, I would just like to tell this story of my survivor pool where over 50% of people took the Bengals, and I almost took the Bengals. And then I made the prediction that, you know what, I think the Bengals are getting upset this week. I think half the pool is getting eliminated, so I went with the Saints instead. The Bengals lost. I don't know what's going on, but there's really no excuse at this point. I mean, this is like 4 years in a row where they won one game in the first 2 weeks of the season in the last 4 years. It's disgusting. I don't know. You have Super Bowl aspirations, I'm assuming. So what are we doing? I mean, it was the first game for the Pats' new head coach, Gerard Mayo. They dumped Kool-Aid on the man, for God's sake, and it's week 1. How do you let this happen? I don't understand. This was a game I was only tuning in for the sake of, hoping that half my survivor pool got eliminated.
Which they did.
Yeah. What'd you think?
Well, I mean, they need to figure it out. The Bengals offense, come on, guys. Looked like they had two options. It was either throw the ball to Chase or run the ball up the middle, or you might as well have punted. You have Joe Burrow. I mean, you just have to be better. He's got to be better. The offense has to be better. Everything needs to be better. They need to take a deep look in the mirror, and the choice for them to make a playoff run starts now, because if they decide they want to pick it up in week 4, they're not going to have a win by then. So. Either they come out next week against Kansas City and show up, or I really fear that the Bengals aren't going to be able to make a push for the playoffs.
Yeah, and I'm not about mid-season firings for head coaches or anything like that, but this is a team where, as an organization, you need to start your head coaching search yesterday, because you can't fire Zach Taylor and expect to get somebody better off the street immediately. So you want to find someone before you pull the trigger, right? So they got to start that search, because this is too many years in a row. I understand you had the Super Bowl run. Yeah, you've won some playoff games since then. And I know Burrow's been hurt from time to time. But with the talent on this team, I just don't like it. I don't know if Zach Taylor's the guy. Now, talking about the offense struggling, they lost a guy this offseason that I thought was more or less washed. And he had a hell of a game. We're going to talk about that in a second. But Joe Mixon, I mean... They need to run the ball. They need a balanced offense. I know you got Jamar Chase, but come on, they got to run the ball too.
Yeah, I don't think their run game was actually terrible this game. I think they were probably middle of the pack in terms of how they ran it. It's just that they couldn't get anything going throughout the air. But I mean, Patriots defense, we got to give them credit where credit's due.
Yeah.
I mean, they did hold the Bengals to 10 points.
Yeah.
Although as awful as they looked, Patriots defense under Gerard Mayo, maybe they were a threat this year. I mean, we'll see once they face a competent team, but...
they play Miami twice and Buffalo twice.
Yeah, those will be legitimate tests. But, I mean, I don't think Brissett will last long. I mean, whether to injury or his performance, I mean, especially if the defense is able to get some wins early in the year, they got to make the switch over to May and put the weight on his shoulders to try to make a playoff run, because if they put that weight on Brissett's shoulders, he's just going to collapse.
Next game, Texans and Colts. This was a division game we were really looking forward to. The Texans did end up pulling it out 29-27. Let's just talk about Anthony Richardson for a second, because he was electric, at least on a handful of plays. He had 3 throws that combined for probably 90% of his passing yards, and he had a touchdown run where he just, he wanted that score, right? That 60-yard touchdown pass he had, it was probably 65 air yards on the money in stride, barely set his feet and barely stepped into it. This guy's unbelievable. Now, if he puts it all together and starts, having complete games and develops as a quarterback, he's going to be as dangerous as anybody. I mean, he's going to be on that Josh Allen level if he can put that together. For now, we're still seeing flashes, though. But yeah, those flashes are amazing.
Yeah, I have here that Anthony Richardson is an alien.
Yeah.
Yeah, he doesn't look like he's from this planet.
Yeah. Now, if you look over at the Texans, they still won this game with C.J. Stroud playing very well. We were talking about that trio of receivers and how that was going to look. Stephon Diggs did have a couple touchdowns, although he didn't lead the team in receiving yards. But again, every receiver had a part to play in that offense. But the guy I didn't expect, like I said, Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon had a day. He looked rejuvenated. He flashed much brighter than I think anyone really thought. 159 rushing yards on 30 carries, good for 5.3 yards per carry, and a touchdown. He also caught 3 balls for 19. This was a team that on offense I thought they were more well-rounded. They looked good. It was a close game, yes, but I mean, there's nothing you can do against those Anthony Richardson deep passes, I guess, and it's a division game, so anything can happen. Texans are going to be back in the playoffs this year. They're going to win their division. They're a team to reckon with. I mean, yeah, I wouldn't want to play them. I'm glad my team's not in the AFC.
Yeah. Well, I think you covered it with Anthony Richardson. If he figures it out, watch out, everybody. I mean, that conference with all those quarterbacks adding, Anthony Richardson. I'm glad my team's in the NFC too. The Texans played very well. I was a bit surprised that they were able to play as well as they did against the Colts defense because I thought that the Colts defense would be able to hold up much better than they did. Just a few things to point out here. The Texans had the most plays of anyone in week 1 was 79.
Wow.
The most plays per drive, 7.9 plays per drive, and the highest average time per drive of 4 minutes, which is probably why Anthony Richardson only had 9 completions on 19 attempts, just because he didn't have the ball. Because the Texans dominated time of possession with the 30 carries from Joe Mixon. Yeah. C.J. Stroud, when he needed to, he hit his receivers. At the end of the game there, that catch from Tank Dell, I think, one-handed reaching out towards the sideline. This team, they're pretty special. They got everything in place, and I think they're going to be a definite Super Bowl contender this year.
Yeah, and you got to love Nico Collins too.
And Stephon Diggs.
We
might not love him, but you can't deny his talent.
Yeah. All right, moving on to another game that had a lot of people talking before it even started, the Dolphins and the Jags. Dolphins win 20-17. Yeah, do we want to talk about Tyreek Hill? I'm surprised he played in the game, so if you don't know, he got arrested on his way to the stadium for reckless driving, and some videos have come out about that where, make of that what you will. Tyreek seemed to be okay after the fact, though, even referencing the arrest in a celebration after he scored on an 80-yard touchdown. Shouldn't say arrest, detainment, I think is the proper term. Yeah. I don't know. Justice for Tyreek.
Well, I think, if anything, it set a fire under him to play. You can see that 80-yard touchdown. But it seems like just about every game, Tua finds Tyreek somewhere over the middle of the field on a ball. He just kind of floats up there and he takes it to the end zone. But the real story about this game is the comeback, right? Because the Jaguars had no business losing this game. Just a horrible way to start the season, collapsing week 1 against a potential, AFC rival on the road. Trevor, I think he played pretty well, but I mean, there's just no excuses for the way that they lost that game in the second half after being up as much as they did. And also something to point out here, I have the Jags as the worst pass protection team in the league week 1 with a sack rate of 13%, which is not good. So offensive line struggled, team collapse. Trevor still has long hair, but that's about all they got going on for them right now.
Yeah, I mean, the Jags scored all of their 17 points in the first half. You can't get shut out in the second half of a football game in this league. Doug Peterson, I mean, the seat just keeps getting hotter and hotter. Could he potentially be a guy that finds himself without a job? If not mid-season, by the end of the year.
Definitely.
Yeah, unfortunately. We had high hopes for him when he got hired by Jacksonville, I think. I'm a Doug guy. I know you are. So it's disappointing to say the least. We'll see if they can get back on track, though. Because you never know. It's week 1. Anything can happen.
I hope so. I hope they can.
Yep. And I will say the Dolphins are a team where, yeah, they won. They came back. Both the receivers, Waddle and Tyreek, they both eclipsed 100 yards. But their run game was a little underwhelming. It was a little less than what we expected based on last year. I think their offense in general, you maybe expected a little bit more. Even though Tua had a decent game when it was all said and done, they only scored 20 points.
Yeah, well, you know what? I will chalk this one up to a week 1 because they didn't make any critical mistakes.
Yep.
They were just slow, in plays developing that I think last year they looked to get into a lot quicker, which, is better for Tua. The quicker he gets rid of the ball, the better it is for that offense. So I wouldn't put too much behind it. They just have the speed and the talent. I think they're going to be another elite offensive threat this year.
Yeah. Moving on. This was my game of the week, the Panthers and Saints. No, I'm just kidding. But it was the Panthers and Saints, and the Saints did win 47-10. We talked about the Panthers, what they were going to look like this year with new head coach. I never know how to say his last name. Canels? Canels?
Let's go with Canels.
Let's go with Canels? Okay. Coming over from Tampa Bay. He was a longtime assistant in Seattle. OC for Tampa last year, and they seem to look a lot better with Baker than they did previously with Brady in his final year. So you think maybe there's some hope. They lose 47-10. Bryce Young looks as lost as ever. I don't know what the hell's going on. They just seem to be headed in the wrong direction. I mean, Bryce is supposed to be making up for lost time. He's supposed to be, you didn't do anything in your rookie year. What are you going to do this year? Team's kind of starting over. I know their owner is allegedly a little crazy too. Like, this team just seems to be dysfunctional. So what are they going to do? How are they going to change this? I have no idea. I don't know how they're going to get better. I don't know how they turn it around. I don't know what Bryce Young's potential actually is because it's been so long that he's been on the team and we haven't seen really the flash of that yet. On the other side, the Saints are, they're looking pretty good. I mean, I kind of counted them out earlier this year when talking about this division, and maybe that was disrespectful. Maybe I should have considered them a little more fairly. Now, having said that, they did play the Panthers, right? But Derek Carr looked very, very nice.
Yeah,
the offense looked good. And he still has that deep ball. And it is the case that his second year, Derek Carr's second year with a new head coach, with a new OC, is usually the year he performs the best. So maybe we should kind of respect the Saints this year.
I mean, they just absolutely dominated this game. There's not much more to be said. No. I mean, 507 all-purpose yards, most in the league. One of the top 3 big-time throwers this week. Bryce Young, one of the top 5 small-time throwers. Worst third down team in the league. 1 of 10. You're just not going to do anything with that. Saints I have as one of my 3 best driving teams. They scored 80% of their drives. Panthers scored less than 20%. I mean, Saints had an average starting field position past their 40-yard line. I mean, there's just nothing to say about this game other than that the Saints dominated and the Panthers didn't show up.
And for a division game, like, this just makes you feel sick if you're a Panthers fan. You see one team trending in the right direction, you're trending in the wrong direction. Now, I will say, I say the Saints are trending in the right direction. I don't really know if that's true. I know they got cap issues.
We'll see week 2.
We'll see. Well, yeah, we'll see.
Week 2, they play Dallas.
Yeah. But long term, they got cap issues. Carr's not going to be there long term. You wouldn't think. There's a lot of question marks, but at the same time, every team, you only win the Super Bowl 1 year. Like, it's like winning the Super Bowl is not a 5-year process. You can win it any given season. So maybe the Saints are onto something this year. Maybe they're competing. Maybe they're in the playoffs. Maybe they're a wild card team. Maybe they win the division. We don't know.
It is the division to win.
Yeah. Moving on, though, we got a game here where we had a little disagreement about how we thought it was going to pan out. It was the Vikings and the Giants.
My goodness.
Vikings win 28-6. I opened this conversation last week by saying Sam Darnold is back, baby. And guess what? Sam Darnold is back. Kevin O'Connell, just as I expected, schemed it up perfectly. We got off to a hot start. Darnold was 19 for 24. 208 yards, 2 touchdowns. He did have a pick near the end of the third quarter, but at that point, the final score was already settled at 28-6. There was no coming back from that. The Vikings did try to hold on against the Montreal Canadiens. Sorry, the New Jersey Giants Did you see their uniforms that they were wearing?
Yeah, they
looked like Spider-Man.
They were ugly.
Yeah,
they were terrible.
On a hockey team, they'd be beautiful.
Well, not as beautiful as Montreal's, but
I think if they had won the game, if the Giants came out looking dominant and somehow all their answers were solved, the fans would love those uniforms. But if you're going to wear something like that, you can't suck. That's the issue. Now, for the rest of the Vikings, I mean, Aaron Jones, he's looking like he's going to have a good season. I think he's looking like he was a good offseason ad, 14 for 94 and a TUD. That's over 6 yards per attempt. But on the Giants side, yeah, Danny Dimes didn't show up. Barely completed half of his passes. I don't know why he's having over 40 attempts. Well, because they traded Bijan Robinson. Saquon Barkley, right? So I don't know what they're doing. I mean, Brian Dable, this is going to be a bad year for you. You were a guy that impressed me a couple of years ago. I think you impressed a lot of people. He was coach of the year. And I don't know if he's not on the same page with Giants management and the way they're handling those players or what. But yeah, if you're a Giants fan, I don't know how you don't just check out at this point.
No, I have him down as the worst offense in the league. There's not really much to say here. I mean, I tried to find something positive to say about the Giants.
You gotta think, if you can't have nothing nice to say.
Yeah, I did find a couple of nice things to say. One is that Dexter Lawrence, Bobby Okereke, and Kayvon Thibodeau are decent defensive players. And Brian Dable lost a considerable amount of weight in the offseason. So,
good for him.
You know, there's a couple of positives there.
I'm happy.
But other than that, we're looking at a potential 0-6, 0-17. I don't see them winning a game if they're going to play anywhere close to this going forward. But on the Vikings side of the ball, Sam Darnold is not back, baby. Sam Darnold played the Giants. Sam Darnold's going to be seeing ghosts again in a couple of weeks. And
I don't know.
Vikings fans can't wait for J.J. McCarthy to come back soon enough.
I don't know. Well, come back. He's never seen the field. I mean, in the regular season anyway.
Yeah, you know what? I still would consider having a J.J. McCarthy over Sam Darnold going forward.
All right. I mean, McCarthy, he is a winner.
Yeah, he is a winner. Sam Darnold is not.
Well, all right. Speaking of winners, Jim Harbaugh's back. Chargers, Raiders, division game. Chargers win 22-10. Harbaugh's back and he kicks off this NFL stint with a win. It's the Raiders, yeah, but it still counts, right? Any given Sunday. And you know what? They did it the way that everyone kind of predicted that they would do it, except for me. I thought that, Justin Herbert would come out and he would start slinging it to a bunch of guys that, I didn't know their names. I don't know who's on this team. They don't have Eckler anymore. They don't have Keenan Allen anymore. But I thought they'd get it done. Instead, they run the ball. And J.K. Dobbins, a guy that kind of forget is on this team. He was a guy I really loved on the Ravens a couple of years ago before he was just devastated by knee injuries. He looked electric. He had one big run in particular that really kind of swung the game. And their defense played really well. Khalil Mack, Boza, both got in the backfield, got to the quarterback. It was a team that, they played good defense. Offensively, they didn't have to do a ton. But they won the turnover battle 3-0 most of the time. That's enough to win you the game, especially if you have an experienced quarterback and an experienced head coach. Speaking of Dobbins, 10 carries for 135 yards and a TUD. Caught 3 balls too. Herbert, sub 150, which again isn't what you expect, but a win's a win. Lead receiver on the Chargers, you know who that was?
It was a lad?
It was Lad.
Yeah.
Lad McConkey.
Fantasy points.
You know how many receiving yards he had?
40.
39. You're over. You lose. Okay. You went over.
Close enough. Yeah, I mean, the most positive thing I can take away from this game for the Chargers is that they did have 2 fourth-quarter touchdowns.
Yeah.
So they did score late. However, for the bulk of the game, I have them down as one of my worst driving teams of Week 1. They had the second lowest plays per drive this week, second to the one and only Carolina Panthers. And they're also bottom 10 in yards per drive. So, they did play well in the fourth quarter, but I do think that they have a lot of figuring out to do still on offense in order to actually compete in that division.
Yeah, this is one of those teams, and I have no tangible evidence for this, but they're one of those teams that I just have a feeling that they're going to elevate their level of play to their opponents. They're playing the Raiders, you're going to get a game like you got this week. They go and play the Niners, for example. they're going to match their energy. They're going to play on their level. They're not always going to win. But they give me that aura, and maybe it's because of Harbaugh, maybe it's because of Herbie. I like these guys. I don't know. Maybe it's because I just, I'm sad about San Diego losing their football team, and I want to say something nice. But I just have a feeling this year, even though on paper we don't think they're going to be that competitive, I think they're going to be in most of these games this year. That's my take. And again, no evidence to back it up, but we'll see.
No, I think that would be exciting for the league if that were the case. So
yeah, and their fans, it gives them something to root for.
Mm-hmm, definitely.
Moving on, Seahawks and Broncos. Seahawks win 26-20. This was a game we said we're going to keep a close eye on Bo Nix, see how he does in his first game, just like all the rookie quarterbacks, rookie players this week. Yeah, he's a rookie. It was his first game. Not exactly what you want to see, but at the same time, yeah, it's his first game. It was a close one throughout. Seattle might have liked a more decisive victory, but a win is a win. And Mike McDonald's got to be happy about getting his first win as a head coach. The offense ran through Kenneth Walker, though. 103 yards on 20 carries and a TD. Yeah, Geno had a decent scramble for a touchdown as well, about 34 yards. But it was in a game that wasn't his best, if we're being honest. Geno seems like a guy where hopefully this year he plays just well enough in any given game to win the game or to get his team in position to win. But he's not lighting up the scoreboard or, stacking up his stats unless it's absolutely required for them to win. We've seen him in a few years in the past, just, going up against the Lions even when he's on Seattle. Lions are going to score a lot of points. Okay, he's going to score a lot of points. If it's an ugly, low-scoring game, he's going to do just enough to win. So that's my take on him. The rookie, though, Bo Nix, he had 2 interceptions on the day. He threw 42 times. I don't know why all these coaches are having their quarterbacks throw so often, especially guys that are, rookies or Daniel Jones, which might as well be a rookie. 42 attempts for 138 yards. Not what you want to see. Sloppy start to the season. But, we'll see how his career progresses.
Yeah, I have written down here, Bo Nix makes some ill-advised throws.
Ill-advised, okay.
And then I started to dig into the Denver Broncos offense a little bit this week. And actually, I have the first Checkdown Chump special on the Denver Broncos offense this week. So let's break it down. The Denver Broncos had 15 drives, which was most in the league week 1, with a starting average field position on the 40-yard line. Just think about that for a second. They had 15 drives, and their average starting field position was on the 40-yard line. Now, I kind of climbed into the rabbit hole here a little bit, and I looked at the theoretical points that they should have been able to produce based on 15 drives starting at the 40, and I come out to having them score somewhere between 38 and 40 points theoretically based on that. So for them to only score 16 offensive points because it did have the 2 defensive safeties, it's just abysmal. So they had the highest points over expected points over expected this week at 39.83 because they were expected for a negative 19.83 points based on that disgusting performance. Bo Nix may be a rookie, but he just had the worst rookie week 1 performance of all time.
You think most of the time I have the feeling that when you draft a rookie quarterback, it kind of gives your head coach a longer leash, gives him a little bit more time. Do you think Peyton lasts the whole season?
Well, he does have 2 quarterbacks on the bench that are probably better than who he chose to start. So either he rolls with his guy and he lives with the consequences, or he mixes it up and hopes that one of them can produce, because if none of them can, then he's gone.
We'll see. Moving on. Cowboys at the Browns. Another game where we had a little disagreement here. The Cowboys won 33-17. Now, I think you predicted the Cowboys would not win a single road game this year. Was that correct?
I think it was.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it was just one game. Might lose the rest. Now, I think this was actually a game where we disagreed about both teams in general for the season, the Browns as well.
Yeah, we did.
We talked about the Browns offense. I wasn't that hopeful. And really it was because of Deshaun Watson. I didn't have a problem with their other weapons, their other players. They got a lot of pieces there. But I just have no hope for Deshaun Watson. He seems like a guy who just has got his money, is checked out, isn't coming to the game prepared. isn't throwing with anticipation. He's just standing around waiting for somebody to get open and then throw to them. Yeah, I think this whole thing, and this is year 3 with the Browns, I think this whole experiment has just been a disaster. And now we're seeing in the news there's a new case being levied against him. So I don't know what's going to happen. But yeah, this guy's cooked. He's terrible. I couldn't watch the game. I tuned in just a couple of times to see the Cowboys players running down the field, scoring a touchdown. It was 33-17. Overall, it was kind of an underwhelming game from their offense. I think their offense will get better. This is, after all, still a good defense, still coached by Jim Schwartz. But yeah, the Cowboys are going to be fine. The Browns are donezo. I don't know. I don't have much faith in them.
Yeah, the Browns need to start Jameis Winston yesterday.
Yeah.
There's no possible way that he could be worse than Deshaun. I mean, you're right. He's checked out. He's not playing. Team's not playing hard around him. At least Winston will come in with some of that creative energy, which may fire up a team at times, get them to play hard again.
Can eat some dubs.
Yeah, eat some dubs. I mean, I have the Browns as the worst passing offense in the league week 1, which is, saying something considering we saw some pretty abysmal performances. But I would like to touch on the Cowboys here, because the Cowboys I actually have as my lucky team of the week.
Okay.
Okay.
Because they were playing Deshaun.
Yes. Yeah, because they're playing Deshaun. But the real reason why I have them as my lucky team of the week is because they actually played a pretty poor offensive game. Not just a poor, like I have them in a negative ratings for their offensive performance.
Okay.
Also, I have them in a category with 4 other teams. And I don't just have them in this category. This is a statistical category, okay? And I'll list off the teams, okay, just so you can understand what, why I'm making this comparison.
Mm-hmm.
Bears, Broncos, Browns, Titans, Cowboys. All 5 teams average less than 20 yards per drive this week.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they did play the Browns, so of course they won, but they need to improve. I mean, that's not going to hold up against any team outside of the other 4 I just mentioned. So, they got up early, they kind of coasted, which they could do because their defense was just dominant against that Browns offense. But against better teams, we're going to have to see something from them.
Yeah. Now, luckily for the Cowboys, they don't have to go too far down the field because they got Brandon Aubrey. Shout out to him. He made a 66-yarder that was called back for a delay game. I thought they should have let him go for the 71-yarder. McCarthy didn't think so because McCarthy's a dum-dum. I don't like him. But that's my analysis of the situation.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
All right, moving on. We got the Commanders and the Buccaneers. Bucs win 37-20. Man, something about the Bucs succeeding is just a lot of fun. They're a fun team to watch play when they're really rolling. But Jaden Daniels is the only rookie quarterback really this year so far that I watched and thought, this guy's worth watching. He's still a rookie, but he was 17 for 24, 184 through the air. But the biggest contribution from him was 16 carries for 88 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground. So at the very least, he kept this offense looking interesting, exciting, fun to watch. Mm-hmm. And, he's out there competing. He's doing everything he can. Mm-hmm. He's a guy who actually is athletic enough. And you were saying this last week where, his athleticism, it's not just something that works in college.
No,
it cuts in the pros. He's special. You're right.
He is, yeah.
So I was impressed with that. I mean, and again, this is a Buccaneers defense where, this is an NFL defense. This isn't a bottom tier defense at all. So, you got to be excited about that just because it tells you, okay, the potential is there. Now, having said all that, they still lost by 17. The Buccaneers are a team that's trying to win now. The Commanders are at the start of their journey, right? So Buccaneers, I think they're winning the division this year. Mike Evans continuing his thing. Baker Mayfield, he just looks special. He probably had the cleanest game of any quarterback week 1. I mean, because a lot of guys were rusty this week. Yeah, 289 yards, 4 touchdowns, no picks. Buck Irving on the ground was pretty effective for them as well, and the defense got home a couple times. So well-rounded game, but for me, Baker is the bright spot.
Yeah, I don't take exception to anything you said there. I do have a couple interesting notes here for the Commanders.
Okay.
I have them as my unlucky team of the week.
Oh.
Scoring only just over 10 more points than expected, which is the weekly low. But also something to point out here, which just jumped out on me when I was going through the stats, is they were the worst kickoff team in the league this year, with an average kickoff of only 49.5 yards. So a touchback, right? They bring it out, that's 65 yards.
Yeah.
Their average was over 25 yards worse than the touchback.
Did they have any that they kicked out of bounds, like sideline, that were penalized?
I didn't watch the game. I didn't go through it all to see, but that's has definitely something to do with the fact that they allowed 37 points from the Bucs. So they need to clean it up on special teams, but I mean, I just can't talk enough about Bucs and the Baker. Bucs and the Baker.
Bucs and the Baker.
I like it. Best offense, week 1. Best passing offense, week 1. Although I do have him down for a negative rushing. But, I mean, considering how well Baker threw the ball, that's almost a moot point. Best overall offense, best driving team. They just did it all this week. Yeah. Baker looks like he's an elite quarterback. And I'm excited to see what the season has in store for him because those were some nice throws that he made on those touchdowns.
Yeah.
And if he can do that consistently with those experienced wide receivers, I'm sure the running game's going to come around with Rashad White. I mean, he's no slouch back there.
Right.
This could be a legitimate threat coming out of the NFC this year.
Yeah, and they won a playoff game last year, as you know. Mm-hmm. And they're a team that next week they got to travel again, and they got to play a team that beat them twice last year. Not a divisional rival, though. An ex-divisional rival, the Detroit Lions. Speaking of which, Lions and Rams. This was my game of the week. And I think I was right to choose them, considering it was the first game of the 2024 season to go into overtime. So I think we all understand why this was the game of the week. So this was exciting for me.
Oh, yeah.
The way it started off, we knew the Rams would be out their starting left tackle and their starting right tackle. What we didn't know is that they would sustain 2 more offensive line losses in the game, early in the game. They had to shuffle guys around all over the offensive line. They had their guard playing center. Then after the injuries, they had to move him back to guard and put in the backup center. They were 1 injury away from having to put a defensive lineman in to anchor the offensive line. It's unbelievable. It's insane. Having said all that, the game started. The first series for them, really, the Lions' defense just swarmed them. I saw that first series and thought, oh my God, our defense is elite. Now, the Rams made adjustments, of course. Then they lost more players. They lose Puka Nacua, who we now know is going to be out for a little bit, which is unfortunate. But the Rams are just a good team at making adjustments. Matthew Stafford, I mean, he made some throws in this game that I just couldn't believe. He was getting the ball out so fast. Dan Campbell said himself they could have had 2 high school players playing tackle. We still wouldn't have got any more sacks because that's just how fast they were getting rid of the ball. Unbelievable stuff. In the end, it wasn't quite enough, and part of that is because they lost the coin toss in overtime, but it is what it is. Now, the Lions offense, they did some things very well. They did some things that we probably want to see them improve on as the season goes on. Amon-Ra St. Brown, a guy who last year was dominant. He was consistent, and this week he didn't really do anything. It was the first game in my memory since he's been with the team, probably since his first stretch of 6 or so games that he was with the team where he wasn't really a factor. He had a couple plays, Goff targeted him once and ended up throwing an interception. That was a play where some people thought, well, maybe he didn't, fight for the ball hard enough or whatever. I don't blame him for that. Goff was another guy who looked like he had some rust that he has to shake off. The offensive line, they weren't dominant the whole game, but they were dominant when it counted, right? So, again, a lot of areas of this team where you're going to see some improvement as the season goes on. But David Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs, right? Jahmyr Gibbs didn't have a huge game, but he made some plays. David Montgomery had a big game, particularly that overtime drive. Overtime, the offensive line played the way that we know they can play, right? That's an image. That overtime drive, that's what I want the season to look like, right? Yeah. Like, they could be rusty all game long. They can be hot and cold, but that last drive, they put it together, they were perfect. 7 plays, 6 of them were runs. 8 plays, 7 of them were runs, 6 of them to David Montgomery. Absolutely perfect. They go down, they score the touchdown. And then when you have guys like St. Brown that aren't really having a big game because maybe they're getting all the attention, you got guys like Jameson Williams. Jameson Williams, my dark horse offensive player of the year. He had a career high 130 yards from scrimmage. His first game of his career with over 100 receiving yards, 50-yard touchdown. He's so fast.
What a move, eh?
He's so fast.
What a move.
It was absolutely insane. That's exactly what we were all hoping for. And in the back of my mind, I thought, man, it's not going to happen. Is he going to be a bust? Like, come on. Like, we can't have nice things. No. He came out. He did exactly what everyone thought he was going to do. He had his first full off-season transition into the regular season. He didn't deal with an injury, didn't deal with the suspensions. And he had a play where they ran him on an end around where he got rolled up on and it looked like his ankle was hurt early in the game. He came right back. He was blazing past everybody. He's fine. He's good to go. He's your offensive player of the year. Just wait and see. I'm excited. So
hold on a second. I
go
thought
for it.
that
Jump
Kyren
in.
Williams was your offensive player of the year, and Williams was your dark horse, hey?
Look. Kyren Williams was my pick before the Rams' offensive line suffered 5 deaths. Okay, that was my pick,
and before you knew he was returning punts.
Okay, let me speak to this if I can respond. Cooper Kupp was the Rams' designated punt returner 2 years ago.
Okay, fair enough.
Because the Rams just call fair catches. I don't think he had a single legitimate return. He just called fair catch every time because he's so good at not muffing punts. I think Kyren Williams was meant for a similar role this year. They're not actually going to use him to return punts. He's just calling for fair catches the way Cooper Kupp would historically. He would be the guy, and I think this is a Rams team where unfortunately they have so many injuries, including Stafford. People forget early in the game he had to get his ankle taped, and then he got hurt again. He was limping around, so he's banged up. This is a team that's so talented, but they have so many injuries. They're probably going to not really have more than 2 or 3 wins by the time they get to week 8. And then maybe by week 8, they get healthy enough where they go on a late season run, very similar to last year. And then they barely sneak into the playoffs, and then they'll have a chance at the dance. Then they can go on a little run. Something can happen. But unfortunately, it's going to be hard to get there. They're going to have to be perfect in the back half of the season because I think this first half of the season, they got too many injuries. It's going to be ugly. So that's where I think they stand, which is kind of unfortunate. As for the Lions' defense, they weren't getting home a lot. They only had the 1 sack, Aiden Hutchinson, at the end of the first half. But they were getting home a lot. Incredible amounts of pressure they were getting all game. And again, it's just the Rams and Stafford getting rid of the ball quick to counter that. Now, they should be getting a lot of pressure because the guys they're playing against, they're not starters in this league. They're not playing at their natural positions. So you have to expect that, right? That's the bare minimum. I think going forward against the Bucs and as they play other teams, that'll be the test. We'll see how well they do. But for now, I was very impressed. Secondary looks better. Terrion Arnold, rookie corner, had a couple defensive pass interferences called on him, rightfully so. I'm not too upset. He was at least in position. He's just got to learn, turn your head, know when the ball gets there. Just things that rookie corners have to deal with. You don't expect him to be Sauce Gardner in his rookie year, right? So I'm not too worried about that. I'm very happy with how the defense is looking so far. Kirby Joseph had an interception on Stafford, kind of a head scratcher. I think it was one where Stafford threw off his back foot and didn't really get enough air under it. A lot of people saying, and I said this at the time, the Lions' blueberry uniforms blend in perfectly with the end zone, and I would not put it past it. I think this is actually legitimate. It's possible that in his peripherals, Stafford couldn't see Kirby Joseph because he just blended in to the background. Yeah. So, but at the same time, give him props, he caught the ball. So I'm happy with where our defense is. I'm pretty freaking excited. I'm pretty stoked. Even if you're someone that would have liked a more decisive win than an overtime win, this was a team that was in the playoffs. They have Matthew Stafford. They have Cooper Kupp. They have Kyren Williams. They have McVay. And again, it's week 1. Everyone's rusty. It could have been worse. You could have been the Packers. You could have lost your quarterback. You could have lost the game. You could have been the freaking Bengals. All right. Like, this could have gone a lot worse. So for me, I'm thrilled. Victory Monday was nice, even though it was up late, had to wake up early for work. That victory, it kept me going. If we had lost, it would have been a long week. But I'm in a good mood.
Yeah. I'll keep this quick. I'll give props to the Rams defense first for playing well. I thought that the Lions would come out and run up and down on them all game like they did in overtime, but we really didn't see that so much.
No.
Although I do have the Lions as the best overall rushing offense in the league week 1 by quite a wide margin. I do think that offensive line is still very elite. I just think that things didn't necessarily work out in their favor, although they were creating the space that was needed for the running backs to break free. It just didn't happen. Also, credit to the Rams offense. Like you said, Stafford, really the only quarterback in the league who would have been able to put up the performance that he did given the circumstances.
I think so.
So it is a bleak look for them with all those offensive linemen out going forward. I think the Lions are going to come back and they're going to run the ball much more than it did week one. And I think they need to really rein in Goff, right? I don't think they want to. I think they need him to operate in a system where he's only handing the ball off and doing play action.
Right.
I just think that's probably what they need to start him off with, and then kind of open up the playbook as they establish a dominant run. So
yeah, I think they see him as a guy who's capable, and they're not going to be afraid to let him throw it. And people speculate, well, on the overtime drive where it really mattered, he only threw it once, and it was a dump off to Gibbs, right? And I don't think that's so much, not wanting to put it in his hands. I think it's that, hey, we have the best offensive line in the league. We got great running backs.
The best running game in the league.
Let's just jam it down their throat, do what we do it our way, do it at home in front of our fans, and win the freaking game. Yeah. So I have no problem with it, and I don't think that Jared's thinking about that at all. I think he just, wants to win. So that was my game of the week. Going over to your game of the week. We have the Jets at the Niners. Wasn't as close as you would have liked, but 32-19 for the Niners. I don't have a lot to say about this game. I mean, Rodgers, he had some moments that were vintage Rodgers. He also had some moments where he showed his age. The Achilles injury might be playing a factor in that. We don't really know. It's yet to be seen. But he had some moments where he was, rolling out, scampering, and, he looked like Brady out there trying to roll out, which is not typical for him. He's always been a guy that can burn you with his legs, or at least buy a little time. So time will tell, what's going on there. But he's not the Aaron Rodgers of even 2 years ago, let alone 3 years ago when he was MVP.
No, that's right. This did not go as I had expected, before the week started. However, it was a good game to watch. Talking about Rodgers, he's not the same quarterback that he was. His limited mobility and his lack of escapability, it's just not going to be the same Aaron Rodgers that we've seen. He still has the arm talent,
right?
But going up against a defense that's as stacked as the 49ers, he really doesn't have it to be able to extend plays and make big-time throws downfield. Either it's there or it's not.
Yeah.
And in last night's game, it wasn't there enough for them to be able to make a significant impact on the offensive side of the ball. However, something that surprised me when I was going through the stats is that the Jets were the second best third down team of the week. 6 for 10 on third down conversions.
I'm not surprised by that because I can distinctly see in my head, Rodgers completing a multiple 3rd and 7s plus. They had that one drive, I believe it was in the second quarter, where they converted, I think, 3 third downs. They marched down the field. It was a thing of beauty, and I thought, okay, this is something they can use to build off as they go throughout the season. This is the formula. This is what it looks like. Now they had trouble replicating that in the game drive to drive, but they showed those flashes.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you're going up against a team like San Francisco, who was way more dominant than I expected, you don't have any room for error.
No, it's a tall order.
Yeah, so that San Francisco defense, I mean, wow. I was shocked, because they did lose some pieces in the offseason, although they did seem to fill those gaps. It was still a little bit of a question in my mind as to whether or not they would be up to the level they were last year, and it seems like they're almost better. We're going to keep an eye on that as the season progresses, but a defense to be feared. And Brock Purdy, you have him as your MVP.
I did.
I don't, but I was impressed.
Yeah.
The way he was able to seemingly just keep every single drive going with like a broken play, he would find the open guy. Of course, he's got the talented weapons, but he still has to find them, and he found them almost every single time.
Consistently.
That beautiful throw to Ayuk in the end zone that he dropped. If Brock Purdy plays like that, I don't see him losing a game this year because their defense is good enough to stop any offense out there. And with Brock Purdy managing the game, dominating the time of possession that he did, with Ayuk, eventually getting back into rhythm and not dropping passes in the end zone, CMC coming back. I'm high in the 49ers after watching that game.
Yeah, and like you said, Christian McCaffrey didn't play. He's probably going to miss some more games as well. Jordan Mason, the guy who, I don't even know who he is. He comes in. Apparently, he's known since Friday that he was going to be playing, but that wasn't made public until game day.
Yeah, a little scandal
which was
there.
Interesting. So we'll see what the NFL does with that. I don't know if they actually broke any rules or what. The broadcast did give lots of credit to Bobby Turner, the running backs coach, who's been in the Shanahan system since the days of Mike Shanahan with the Broncos. So he had a little moment on TV, which I think was pretty cool. It seems like they can kind of plug anyone in there they want. Trent Williams, he showed why he got paid last night. He was, just busting holes open for the backs. It was crazy. One thing I do want to talk about, Robert Saleh is a defensive guy. He's got talent on his team. What the hell is he doing? I understand it's Kyle Shanahan, but they're missing Christian McCaffrey. Their first-round wide receiver got shot the week before the game. It's week 1. You've been preparing for this game for months, right? Your defense, what are they doing? What are they doing on defense? They just look bad. I know Sauce got banged up at one point, but I don't know. I would have expected more from that defense. Even though it's the Niners, and I know they held them to 32, but it's still 32 points. I expected a little more. If that's the way their defense is going to be all year, and Saleh's the defensive guy, I don't know what's in store for him in his career after this season's over.
Yeah, well, the reason I picked the Jets in this game is because I thought that Purdy would struggle against that Jets defense.
Apparently not.
No, apparently not. Yeah, the offensive line. I mean, not just Trent Williams, but we have to give credit to everybody on that line.
Yeah.
The narrative going into the season was that if Trent Williams doesn't re-sign, then the Niners might be in some trouble because everybody else on the offensive line is a question mark.
Right.
But last night, it didn't seem like there were any question marks on the line whatsoever. They dominated that, what I consider to be the best defensive line in the league last night. So, I'm still not down on the Jets defense. I think they come out next week and they put up a massive performance. But 49ers, they're looking scary.
Yeah.
They are looking scary.
Yeah, and I believe the Niners I had picked to go 17-0 this year. Did I say that?
No, I think you said 15-2. Or maybe 16-1.
I believe I said 16-1.
Yeah.
But in any case,
16-1.
Yeah, they're a good team, and we know why. They just don't have any weak spots, and they're well coached. It's a hell of a team. If they I always forget that they haven't won a Super Bowl in the last decade. I don't know how that's possible. All those championship game appearances, Super Bowl appearances. They got to win one soon. We talk about the Bills having pressure on them. The Niners, I think there's a sense that there's a little less pressure because the team is so well built from the ground up. There doesn't seem to be this, ticking clock, whereas with the Bills, it's a very top-heavy team. You have Josh Allen, and then if you're a casual fan, you might struggle to name anybody else on the team except for Damar Hamlin, who I think got the start this week in week 1, I believe.
Can't confirm, but I think he did too.
Yeah. So in any case, I don't know if this Jets Aaron Rodgers experiment's going to pan out, but he did have that free play touchdown, which
Well, this Niners defense isn't a good test week 1 to see what they're capable of.
Right.
They're not going to have to face them again unless they face each other in a Super Bowl. So I think that there's much positivity still in the Jets offense going forward.
Hoping for some nice shootouts this year coming from that division. Bills, Jets, Dolphins, Patriots of course. Yeah. So we'll see what happens, but I don't know. I thought Aaron Rodgers, I saw a couple pictures of him from the game. He kind of looked like the Great Gazoo. I'll throw a picture on the screen.
Okay,
but
throw a picture. I like that one shot they got of him after they missed the 4th down when he was looking over at the sideline with that, look in his eye.
Yeah.
So to say.
And that 4th and 1, that was a throw where he had no one was in the middle of the field. He could have just led his receiver to the middle of the field. He threw it behind him.
Well, I will say that play along with the interception, he had to get rid of the ball sooner on both, and Wilson was open. So maybe it's just...
It was a good read, yeah.
Well, maybe he should have showed up to training camp, right?
He should have,
Instead of taking a darkness retreat, show up at training camp, build some, corroboration with your guys. But I guess that's just not who he is.
Yeah. We got to make our picks now for this week, and we're going to go through this pretty quickly. First game of week 2, Thursday night game. We have the Bills visiting the Dolphins. I'm just taking the Bills because the Bills just give me more reason to have faith in them. They win all the close games, right? They win games that against the best teams, right? The Dolphins seem to be a team that, they beat up on the bad teams, and then when it comes to playing good teams, it's kind of a toss-up. My gut just tells me the Bills, though.
Yeah, I've been going back and forth on this game all day, but I ended up on the Dolphins.
Okay.
I think the Bills have been pretty good against the Dolphins the last couple of years, at least since Josh Allen has been there. Mm-hmm. But I still am a believer that the Dolphins at home early in the season are not a team that I want to bet against.
Yeah. This isn't a week where I'm considering home field advantage to be that big of a deciding factor, unlike week 1 where I was mainly picking the home teams. Mm-hmm. The next game, 1 o'clock game on Sunday, Chargers visiting the Panthers. I'm taking the Chargers, the away team. I don't think I have to explain that one. They look like the better team, although I know by some metrics you've mentioned they're pretty similar. If the Panthers win, hey, that'll be a hell of an upset, but I'm going Chargers.
Yeah, after that week 1 performance from the Panthers, it's going to take a win before anybody picks them, so I'm going Chargers.
Yeah. All right, next game, we got the Saints at the Cowboys. Cowboys at home. I mean, the Saints had a dominant performance, but again, it was against the Panthers. The Cowboys had a pretty dominant performance, but it was against the Browns defense. And they got to play against a crappy quarterback. I would love to pick the Saints. I'll be rooting for the Saints, but I'm picking the Cowboys.
Yeah, I'm picking Dallas too. I think they only have 2 losses at home over the past 2 years. So
yeah, and their defense is a heck of a lot better than the Panthers.
Yes.
Moving on, we got the Buccaneers going to Detroit. I hope this is a good game. I think it will be. Both teams are really talented. I'm obviously a Lions fan, but I like a lot of the guys on the Bucs, and I'll be rooting for them throughout the year. But this is a game where I think the Lions just have that intangible factor where they're at home, and when they're at home, they're going to match whatever their opponent is giving them, and they're just going to roll. So, yeah, I'm taking the Lions. That's an easy one for me.
Okay, I'm going Bucs.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that with the healthy offensive line, week 1, the Rams win the game.
Possibly, yeah.
I think that this Bucs passing offense is way better than anybody expected, and I don't think that the Lions' secondary is going to be able to properly prepare for what they're about to face with these veteran receivers. And I think Baker has another big game.
I don't think these receivers are the same as the Rams in that they're going to be getting open like Cooper Kupp in 1.5 seconds. I think Mike Evans is going to they're going to run him deep down the field. And Baker's just going to hold on to the ball waiting for guys to get open. And if he does that, if he doesn't throw it immediately, I think the Lions are going to get home a lot more than they did against the Rams. So I actually think the Lions match up better this week than they did last week in a sense. But we'll see what happens. But I don't mind the Bucs pick. Like I said, I think the Bucs are great this year.
I think it's going to be a great game regardless.
Yeah, I can't wait. And I'm excited for a 1 o'clock game. That's all I want. This is just a nice Sunday afternoon game where I don't have to stay up too late, All right. Moving on, we got the Colts going to the Packers. This is a game where, I would have taken the Packers, but Jordan Love is out. So in Lambeau Field, I'm taking the Colts. Anthony Richardson's going to get a couple big plays that probably swing the game in their favor.
Yeah. I have Anthony Richardson going here for his first ever Lambeau leap.
All right.
Packers fans aren't going to like it. Colts win big.
All right. We'll see how Jonathan Taylor does on the Lambeau Field grass. Moving on, we got the Browns at the Jags. This is the Jags' first win of the season for me. The Browns, I can't pick unless they're going up against, another dumpster fire team. So, give me the Jags. Jags are going to hold on.
I got the Jags too. However, I was going back and forth a little bit just because of how brutal a collapse the Jags had week 1, wondering if that would carry over into week 2. But as abysmal as that Browns offense is, I just don't see them doing anything. So give me the Jags.
Next game, we got the Niners going to the Vikings. Is Sam Darnold back? I think he is, but I think the Niners are still going to win.
You know what? If the Vikings win and Sam Darnold has a big game, then he's back.
All right.
But I don't think that's going to happen.
What if they lose and he has a big game?
Well, what do you mean by big game? Like consistent throughout the entirety of the game, or the 49ers are up by 40 going into the fourth quarter, so he just, is able to put up some what looks to be big-time numbers.
What if the game's competitive?
Because of Sam Darnold?
Yeah.
You know what? Maybe he's back.
I predict Sam Darnold's going to have a big rushing touchdown this game. He's going to scamper down the field for like 25 yards, sneak it in. It's going to happen.
You know what? I think that he might scamper for a 25-yard touchdown when they lose 49-7.
All right. Moving on then, we got the Seahawks going to play the Patriots. Patriots showed us something last week. Seahawks did just barely enough to win against a very terrible offense. Having said that, I think I'm going to go with the Seahawks still. Patriots are a team where, you know what? They might go 1-16 this year. They might get 6 or 7 wins, but it's possible they don't win another game. I don't know. I don't know how good their team really is, or if that was just a classic Bengals early season collapse. So I'll go Seahawks for now. I might eat my words, but
okay. Well, I got the Patriots.
Okay.
I don't think the Seahawks are going to travel well to New England. I think the Patriots are hot coming off of a big Week 1 win against Cincinnati.
They're feeling good for sure.
Yeah, and the Seahawks really struggled the first half. You know, they were safety twice, and this Patriots defense is definitely better than the Denver defense. So I have them winning in a low-scoring, close one.
Although Denver's defense has some pieces.
Some.
Yeah, they do.
Some pieces, yeah.
All right, moving on. Jets, Titans. Give me the Jets. I know they're on the road, but the Great Gazoo, he's going to do something eventually. Titans, this could be Will Levy's big game where he comes out and he throws for 500 yards and all that, but I don't think that's going to happen.
I don't think so either. I would like to see a shootout this game. However, against the Jets defense, I don't think it's going to happen. Yeah. So I got the Jets, and I don't think they're really going to have much troubles.
Although if Jordan Mason, had that kind of success against the Jets, then maybe Tony Pollard, he had an impressive Week 1. We'll look for him to contribute. Could keep him in the game. You never know.
Could be interesting.
I wouldn't be surprised if this was an interesting game, but I'm going Jets. Moving on, we got the Raiders and the Ravens. Ravens are the home team. I'm taking the Raiders. Just kidding. We're going Ravens. I don't know. I mean, this is a get-right game for the Ravens because last week I know, they came close to winning, but even if they had won, they would still know, okay, we got a lot to clean up. This offense needs to, make some corrections. So look for the Ravens to get right, I think.
Yeah, I got the Ravens. I'm hoping that Lamar's psychopathic behavior continues into Week 2, just trucking into defensive linemen who are 3 times his size.
Yeah.
I got the Ravens.
Okay. The last 1 o'clock game, we got the Giants going to Washington to play the Commanders. I like the Commanders in this one. I think Jaden Daniels, wills his team to a win. I think the offense is going to get going a little bit. Giants, I see just continuing down the path of, not glory, the opposite.
Yeah, I got the Commanders too. It is a NFC East divisional game, so anything could happen, but it would be shocking to just about everybody if the Giants were able to pull off this upset.
Yeah. Moving on to the late afternoon games, we got the Rams going to the Cardinals. This was a game that I actually thought about quite a bit. The Cardinals, they're a team that the Rams have kind of had their number in recent years. They usually do pretty well, although before that the Cardinals had a bit of a streak, I believe. I don't know, the Rams are the better team, but they're really, really, really banged up. And it's a division game, and Kyler Murray, he could cause problems for their defense. So I'm feeling like the Cardinals are going to win this one.
Okay. I got the Rams. I don't disagree with anything you said. I just think that Stafford, being the veteran elite quarterback that he is, along with those weapons, really, regardless of how the offensive line is, and we saw it last week against Detroit, he's going to be able to get the ball out quick. They're going to be able to make some plays. And that Cardinals defense really struggled in the second half against the Bills. So. And, you said it earlier, who are the Bills' wide receivers?
Right.
Well, they have to go up against Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. So,
well, not Puka Nacua. He's out for a while now.
Is.
He's on. He's on IR, I believe, for a few weeks.
Well, I think Cooper Kupp might get 20 targets again.
All right, if Stafford has the time.
Yeah.
All right, moving on. We got the Steelers going to play the Broncos. The Steelers made me eat my words last week. Mike Tomlin has my full respect. I'm sorry I disrespected you. Give me the Steelers. That's an easy one.
Yeah, well, after my special on how poor Bo Nix and that Broncos offense played Week 1.
The Checkdown Chumps special.
Yeah, the Steelers, might as well just punt the ball as soon as they get it every time, and they're still going to win from all the defensive scores they're going to get this game. So give me the Steelers.
All right. Look for Chris Boswell to have a big one, I think. All right, we got the Bengals going into Burrowhead. I don't think we can call it that anymore. Chiefs are going to win this one. Bengals are going to be looking to get right, but This is an unfortunate week to have to play the Chiefs. This is the Chiefs win, and I think the Chiefs fans are going to have a good laugh about it.
Yeah, I have the Chiefs. However, this is my game of the week, actually.
Okay.
The Bengals, they need to realize that they need to start now. So I think they're going to come out with some fire set under them. The Chiefs, as offensively dominant as they are and how great that defense is, they're going to win the game, but I think that the Bengals' performance is going to be back to what we're used to seeing out of them.
I don't know, man. I think this could be the game that breaks the Bengals.
Ooh,
and just breaks their fans'
breaking the
minds.
Bengals.
Yeah, we'll see. But I don't have much hope. Next game, Sunday Night Football. The Bears going to play the Texans. This is an easy one for me. We're taking the Texans. Until the Bears show me something, I mean, Caleb Williams has to get it together. They got to learn to run the ball. They got to do something on offense because the defense and special teams, they're not going to score 2 touchdowns every game, right? You're going to have to score on offense a little bit. So we'll see. But, I mean, the Texans are just too loaded. I think they impressed me on too many fronts last week against the Colts, especially against that Colts defense. Mm-hmm. I know the Bears also have a good defense, but, we've already seen it from the Texans. So give me the Texans.
Yeah, I mean, week 1, Bears 3 of 15 on third down. Texans, week 1, most plays, highest plays per drive, and most time per drive. So it just doesn't match up well for the Bears here.
No.
They're going to lose the time of possession game, and the Texans are going to dominate.
Yeah. Final game, Monday Night Football. We got the Falcons going to play the Eagles. Given Kirk's history playing the Eagles secondary, Darius Slay seems to have his number throughout his career. I like the Eagles. I want to see them continue. I know it wasn't a perfect game week 1, but it kind of feels like, they're in that mindset of, okay, it's a fresh start. We don't need to collapse. We can keep fighting. We can keep playing. And they're just going to keep winning games. An ugly win is still a win. And the Falcons just were not inspiring against the Steelers. I know the Steelers have a tremendous defense, and I know the Falcons' defense probably is, a little high right now, holding them to only 18 points. But again, I think that's because the Steelers' offense is nothing to shake a stick at. So I think this is a game where just Jalen Hurts is going to have a good game. I think Jesse Bates, I don't know. I don't know if he's the same Jesse Bates of the last couple of years. We'll see what the Falcons' defense is looking like when they go up against the Eagles. But I really feel like the Eagles are going to win this one.
Yeah, I have the Eagles too. I am a little nervous about this one. I do think that the Eagles secondary is going to struggle again against this Falcons offense. And, you mentioned Kurt's history against the Eagles. I think was it last year?
And the year before.
Last year he had a big game against them. They lost, but he had a good game against them.
Bet it was an improvement from the year prior, yes.
Yeah. So, but, on the offensive side of the ball for Philly, I'm pretty high on this Falcons defense. I think they're going to cause some problems, and this is going to be a really important game for Hurts. And I'm hoping that he comes back to his 2022 form. However, I think that Falcons secondary may cause him some troubles again.
Okay. We'll see how we did. Next week, we'll be back on Wednesday, recapping all the games of week 2 and making our predictions for week 3. If you liked this conversation, if you feel like you learned something, or if you feel like we're idiots, feel free to subscribe or comment and tell us how dumb we are. We are the Checkdown Chumps. We will see you next week.
Can't see this, but salute.
That means hello.